Hello and welcome back to Triple Crown Wargaming with another first impressions video, and today it is me, the Duke, and I'm looking at another of the legacy factions, which is today the Ogre Kingdoms. Now there's 5 things that I'm going to sort of go through today that I'm going to give you my first impressions on. Not all of them are positive, I will say that now. One of them is a unit which I think has got considerably worse, I'd probably say. Yeah, let's go with considerably worse. Maybe that's too harsh. When we get to it, let me know down in the comments if you think I'm being too harsh on them. But first of all is not a unit, actually, but it is something that I think which has got significantly better, and that is big names in general. Now, a lot of them do roughly the same or exactly the same thing as they used to, but the thing that I think's got much better about them, the biggest thing, is that they now come from a separate allowance. They don't come from your magic item slot anymore, which I think is a very, very good choice. And to be honest, it's something you see across all of the armies that have any of those sorts of things, like the High Elf Honours, I think they're called, the Wood Elf Forest Spirits, even, if I can get the word out, or Forest Sprites, I'm not actually sure which one it is, Sprites, I think. You know, those sort of things. They all now come from a separate allowance, which I think is a really good choice on Games Workshop's part. But yeah, that's the biggest thing for me that always stopped me taking big names, was the fact that it just came out of my magic item points, which is not something I wanted to be spending those points on. A couple of them also really stand out to me as being really good. First one is Kin Eater. Now, this is like 15 points, I think. And it basically turns your general into sort of a mini BSB. So it's everyone in his command range. So there'll also be his leadership, which is probably 8 or 9, depending on exactly who your general is. But it allows them to reroll any failed panic or rally tests. That's really good. Now, it can only go on your general, but still really good for just 15 points. So you're not getting it on break tests, which is unfortunate, but you can take this in addition to your BSB. So you could have 2 12-inch bubbles, or 18-inch potentially if you mount your generals and your BSB, but generally 12-inch bubbles of re-rolling panic tests and rally tests. So big fan of that. The other one is Death Cheater. So this is one of the 2 that cost 5 points. Beast Killer is the other one. But Death Cheater, you can make your opponent reroll a single to wound roll made against this character. Now, where I think that's particularly good is from attacks that have got Killing Blow. So, which isn't particularly hard to come by, particularly on characters now. And the fact that Killing Blow now affects you, even though you're monstrous, I think having that ability to just go, actually, re-roll that 6, massive. Obviously, they could just roll it into another 6, but it is very unlikely. And I think if I found out that a character in my opponent's army had this, or if I knew a unit had it, I would save the Death Cheater re-roll for when I was fighting those, and if they'd rolled a 6. Absolutely would, without a doubt. So yeah, overall, big names, I think, have got much better. The next thing I wanted to talk about was actually 2 units, which are both of the chariots. Now, they're both heavy chariots. This is the Iron Blaster and the Nobbler Scrap Launcher. And I'm going to talk about them together because really the reasons why I think they've maybe not got better, but are very good, certainly are nothing to do with their shooting weapons. To be honest, well, that's not strictly true. One of them is, to be fair, to do with their shooting weapons. But the first 2, their impact hits, D6 plus 1, phenomenal. I think that's really good. Anything that goes, not necessarily first, but at initiative 10, massive. And they've got first charge as well, ignoring your opponent's rank bonus the first time they charge. So good. You can send them in on their own to most units, their toughness 5 or 6, 4-up save, so, pretty decent. The Rhinox attacks, which both have got 3 strength 5 attacks, really not bad at all. The Iron Blaster obviously has a lead belcher, so 3 more strength 4 attacks. The Scrap Launcher's just got 7 nobblers, not great. But really you're relying on those impact hits, and then the Rhinox attacks as well, which have got Armor Bane, which is, a bit cheeky, quite nice. 6s to win, an extra 2 AP on those strength 5 attacks. Not bad at all. Now, the thing that I think is good for both of these in their shooting role, their more sort of traditional role, you might say, is the fact they're both large targets. Now, this is a downside in that obviously they can be targeted back because they're large targets, so intervening units won't block line of sight. However, it means they can shoot things that are past intervening units. So particularly for the Iron Blaster, because the wording of large target, you ignore intervening units when determining line of sight. As long as there isn't terrain in the way of where you want to, pick the spot that cannonball is going to first land at, going to bounce from, you can choose that spot. Ignore all those units, unless it's a large target. But, ignore all those units. Just pick a spot. Big fan of that. But to be fair, the same goes for the scrap launcher. It can pick a unit that's hidden, at the back of your opponent's army, that's hiding a couple of squishy characters, wizard or something, or that's maybe next to a wizard. You're hoping to scatter onto the wizard. That's always nice. But yeah, the fact it doesn't have to worry, can I see that unit? As long as there's not terrain in the way or another large target, yeah, go large. And I think that is what makes these possibly, now to be fair, I've not looked at all of the artillery, but possibly some of the best artillery in the game, which is weird because it's not really for their shooting stat line. The scrap launcher's not bad. Strength 4 under the hull, 3 for the rest of the blast. -2 AP under the hull, which is not bad. Cheeky multiple wounds too. And the Iron Blaster's a strength 10 cannon, strength 10 -3 cannon, not bad at all. D3 +1 wounds as well, so sort of in line with an Empire Great Cannon. The Scatter Shot, which used to be the strength 10 Grape Shot, which was what it was in 8th edition, is now strength 4 -1, and it's just a breath weapon. So that has got considerably worse, I would say. But the general cannon is, a cannon, so it's okay, it's solid. But the fact they're large targets, they can see over other units, that makes them considerably better, in my opinion. Now, though, we're going to take it down a notch, and we're going to go on to the unit I think has got considerably worse in the old world from 8th edition, and that, unfortunately, is a unit I enjoyed using, actually, in 8th, which was Lead Belchers. Now, they have gone down in points, it is worth saying quickly. They have dropped by 2 points, which I don't think is enough, to be honest, for what they've lost. So the biggest thing they've lost is that they don't ignore any of the modifiers anymore. They used to ignore multiple shots and long range. So really good. All right, they're a rubbish ballistic skill, but they're still that same ballistic skill of 3. So you were really hitting on 4s, 5s if you moved, assuming there wasn't any cover or anything to worry about. And the ignoring of the multiple shots was massive because they each shot D6 shots. So you pumped out what could be a ridiculous amount of shots from a relatively small unit. Now, though, they have 2 types of shots. So they have a solid shot, which is 24-inch range, same as their range used to be. Strength 5, so it's gone up a strength, that's solid. -2 AP, so it's effectively the same armor piercing as it was, because it was strength 4 armor piercing in 8th edition, though armor's got worse, so that's hard really to make a direct comparison. It is also armor bane, which is nice, and it's multiple wounds too, which is solid, but again, not ignoring any of the modifiers. You're hitting on probably 5s, because you're probably going to be at long range, maybe 6s if you've moved as well. And because you're only getting 1 shot out of each of them, you're probably going to want to take a bigger unit, and because you can't shoot in 2 ranks, you've got to take a really wide unit. These guys are on 40mm bases. That is a huge unit very quickly, which I think means you just don't really fire that shot all that often, unless you're, in short range and you haven't moved and you're only hitting on 4s. So maybe if you've got a unit of 3 or 4 of them, you might expect a couple to hit. But then it's only 2 strength 5 shots. Is that really worth 41 points a model? I don't know. They do have the scatter shot, their other type of shot, which is an 18-inch range, so a little bit less. It's only strength 3, no AP. It's armor bane 1, which is okay. And for every successful to hit roll, you actually inflict D3 hits rather than 1. So it's not multiple shot D3, which is nice. You don't suffer the modifier there. So that's not too bad. But it's only strength 3, and it doesn't punch through any armor unless you roll a 6. And it's only 18-inch range, so you're still, even more likely to suffer from that long range penalty. I just don't see it. to be honest. Neither of the shots really seem that good. The one thing they do have, they can stand and shoot with the scatter shot. It's not bad for stand and shoot, because if you do get 1 or 2 of those hits, suddenly you've got 2d3 hits potentially, and obviously those hits or wounds, any potential wounds that come from those, will then count for combat res. So that's not bad, but it's quite a specific use for a unit that costs, you know, over 40 points a model. Yeah, you can take them in units of 2 now, rather than 3. So maybe you go just 2, but then, you know, why are you spending 82 points on that? Why are you not just going for, I don't know, more Iron Guts, more Balls, or another Mournfang, or a Man-Eater and a bit? You know, I just think there's better things to spend the points on, to be honest. And to be fair, Man-Eaters is something that I've been substituting what I would have spent on Lead Belchers in 8th, substituting those points for in the couple of games of the old world that I've been lucky enough to have with my Ogres. And I've got to say, overall, just quickly, from those 2 games, I think they seem very, very sort of high middle tier. That would be my guess at the moment. My sort of indication at the moment would be they're a sort of high middle tier army. They're definitely not top tier. They don't have a flying monster, which is a huge drawback. They also only have 1 unit of sort of cavalry, which is obviously the Mournfang cavalry, which I'll actually go onto a little bit later, which is good, but it is big. You know, you're not going to have tons of it. You're probably going to have a unit of 3 or 4. You're probably not going to want to go much wider than that. And obviously, you don't want to go super deep because you're just essentially wasting the points. But yeah, I do think they're a sort of high middle tier army, looking at them so far. But before I get onto the Mournfang, I also want to talk about actually a unit I never used in 8th edition, but now, thanks to, I'd say mainly actually, a change in one of the core rules, is Gorgers. So they've always had ambushers. I say always. In 8th they had ambushers. They have ambushers still in the old world. However, now ambushers is a choice. So nowhere near as detrimental as it was in 8th, where you were forced to use it if you had the rule. That's probably my biggest takeaway, or my biggest incentive to actually use these guys now. Just means I've got to actually get some built and painted. I have them. I think I have 2 or 3. But I just actually have to get them built and painted. Their stat line's very solid. Strength, toughness 5. 5 attacks, 4 plus their frenzy. Web skill 3, not great. Leadership 8, it's not bad. 4 wounds as well, which is nice. And they've got both light armor, which they never had before, and a 6-up regen as well. So a couple of sort of pips of save, potential ways to save, whereas before they just had nothing. Unless you had Scrag and had done a certain number of wounds, then they got regen, which was very good. But yeah, generally they didn't have a save. Now though, 6-up light armor and 6-up regen. So yeah, very nice. They've also got Swift Stride, which I think with Frenzy feels like probably more of a detriment than a positive, though it does only increase your maximum charge by 3, and you do get an extra d6. So maybe it's not. Maybe I'm being unfair there. But you do have essentially 2 ways to not ignore, but get around the negatives of Frenzy now, of you having to declare a charge on the first turn, either the first turn of the game or the first turn you show up if you ambush. So obviously ambushes being one of them. You can't charge on the turn that you turn up from ambushes. So that's a nice one. You also, you can give them Scout for 3 points. It makes them 93 points. Not too much at all. And you scout them up, then they just cannot declare a charge on the first turn. So they can move normally. They can march up 6. They won't get to turn, which is upsetting. They're not close order. They are... they're not open order, they are close order. So maybe you don't march, maybe you move them and wheel them around a bit. Or with a march, potentially, you could wheel them as well. But yeah, you want to sort of get them up to the flanks, really, I think. Then charge them in from sort of turn 2, or ambushers if you come on. Whenever you come on, you want to position yourself so you can charge stuff in the flanks or the rear from the next turn. They've got a static AP -2 as well on their attacks, which is really nice. Big fan of that, particularly at strength 5. And they've also got a cheeky 1 attack with Kill and Blow. So they've got 4 attacks with their Wicked Claws, which is their -2 AP user strength attacks. And then they have to make 1 with their Distendable Jaw, which is no AP, but it does have Kill and Blow. So not bad at all. But yeah, that 4th wound really is a standout for me. I think they had that in 8th, I'm not sure. But yeah, 4 wounds, 6 up, 6 up, very nice. Something which also has 4 wounds now, but definitely didn't in 8th, is the Mournfang Cavalry. So I mentioned them earlier, and I always love these in 8th. I have a frankly ridiculous amount of them. I think I have probably 21 somewhere. Who knows where they are? I just went through a stage of finding, job lots on eBay and going, I need some more, I don't know, ogre balls, or I want another scrap launcher, or want this. And it happens to come with some Mournfang. So yeah, I've managed to accumulate quite a lot over the years of collecting ogres. They were my first real army, so it's been a while. Yeah, I have a lot. Like I said, I don't really see myself using more than maybe 2 units of 3 or 4. Very similar to 8th, to be fair. Sometimes you'd see 3 units in 8th, but I don't think I ever ran more than 4. Mainly because I didn't have more than 4 painted. I've got a lot of them, but they are all grey, pretty much. Some are spray black. But yeah, these guys have now got 4 wounds, which I actually didn't notice until my second game with them. So would have helped in the first one. But yeah, other than that, they haven't really changed too much, which actually I think is quite good for a lot of units coming from 8th to the old world. They have dropped a point in armor save, but armor save generally on cavalry has dropped, so I'm not seeing that as a huge change. Only getting a 3 up now, not a 2 up. They do also, if you go for the Iron Fist to get that 3 up armor save, it also gives the rider an extra attack. There's nothing to say you have to be on foot, I don't believe, to get the extra attack from an Iron Fist. Nothing that I could see anyway. So that's a nice little bump there. It's not the attacks you want. Obviously, you're paying for the Mournfang's attacks. Those Strength 5, AP -1, Armor Bane 1 attacks, to be precise. From its Monstrous Tusk, Monstrous Tusks. Yeah, very good from the Mournfang. It was, to be fair, like I said, you were always really taking them for the Mournfang's attacks as well. You never saw them in ranks, and they were very expensive. To be fair, though, they have, just trying to work it, they've slightly gone up in points from what they were in terms of if you took them with heavy armour and a shield or an Iron Fist before. I think they were 70 points a model. They're now 71 points a model. So they've dropped an armour save, but they do have an extra wound. So, and to be fair, an extra attack on the ogre. So, all in all, I think that extra point's probably worth it. Their commands got cheaper as well. Like everyone's command has got cheaper. So you're actually saving points. If you took 3 with full command in 8th edition, you would actually pay less to do the same in the old world. And you'd have 3 extra wounds and 3 extra attacks. What is not to love? Yeah, these are probably my favourite unit in the PDF, the Mournfang Cavalry. Big fan of them. And I think they're going to do really good things for a lot of people using their ogres in the old world. There's also a couple of items really that I think stand out for me that I've used in both of my games. The Blood Cleaver is the first one. Really nice magic weapon for your Slaughtermaster. Gives him a little bit of AP, and it also gives him wounds back for every not for every wound. If he causes a wound, he can get a wound back, which is very nice. And the other one was the Spangle Shard, which is a reasonably cheap 4+ ward save. Now, it does go if you roll a natural 1 when you roll for your save, but you know what? For 35 points, I would risk it. The magic armors are not bad either. The final thing, though, I just wanted to quickly point out was the Toothcracker spell. Now, this to me, probably on its own, won me the second game that I had with my ogres in the old world. So it's +1 toughness if you roll a 7 or more. If you roll a 10 or more, it's +2 toughness for a unit. Now, that 10 or more is really not difficult to roll. If you've got a level 4, you just need to roll a 6 on 2 dice. Above the average chance of doing that. Obviously, your opponent has a potential to dispel, but probably not in the first turn, maybe the first 2 turns, depending on how offensive and defensive you're both being. Now, the army I played was Dark Elf, so he had a legacy faction off, and he had a lot of dark shards, so reasonable amount of shooting. I just moved this unit up, cast Toothcracker on them. I then also had, I was using battle magic on my Slaughtermaster. I also had, I think it's Arcane Urgency, the one that lets you move again. You can't march with it, but you can move again. So I moved up, cast this spell, moved up, cast Arcane Urgency to move again, so I could move around some things, and it meant that he wasn't in range to dispel me when I cast the +2 toughness, with even his level 2, let alone his level 4, who'd been much more defensive with. And then turn 2, he was only in range with his level 2, didn't roll well enough with, you know, effectively needing to roll 3 higher than me on the 2d6, which is a whole other thing. And yeah, literally the entire game, my Iron Gut unit, my 7 Iron Guts, I think it was, plus my Slaughtermaster, they were toughness 6 the entire game. They took, I think, 3 wounds, and bore the brunt of his army. To be honest, killed some Dark Shards, which is not too much of a surprise, an entire unit of Blackguard and an entire unit of Executioners, or enough to make them run. Yeah, it was ridiculous how good that spell is. So yeah, definitely one to watch out for. If you are playing ogres or particularly playing against them, this is one that you want to stop. But yeah, those are my first thoughts on the Ogre Kingdoms. Let me know what you think down below. Was I too harsh on the lead belchers? I don't think I was. I think they have got significantly worse, but maybe I'm missing something. If you think they're really good, if you think they've got a niche use, let me know down below. And yeah, thank you for joining me. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you can check out all of our other first reaction, first impression videos, and all the battle reports and other content we'll have for you guys in the coming weeks. But for now, thank you for joining me, and we'll see you next time.
Remember to tag your friends and like, subscribe and share. Then head over to triplecrownwargaming.com and become a Knight of the Realm today.
What are you doing, mate?
You alright? Do it for Warhammer!